Hi, Bill. We'll call the meeting to order. This is a special meeting of the Newcastle Planning Commission. I'm Charlie Gazik, the chair. We will begin with a salute to the flag. Will you all join me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Does anybody have any objection to the agenda? If you do, I'm afraid there's nothing we can do about it, because if we change it, we need 24 hours notice. You could express a concern, I suppose, for the record. Okay, seeing none, we'll continue to the public comment period. Is there anybody online who would like to make a comment? There's nobody in the audience. We will close the public comment period and go to the general business. First item is a discussion of the comprehensive plan open house rules and preparation.
Excuse me, Charlie, I think we need to do roll call.
Oh, yes, we do. Thank you for bringing that up. Would you do that for us?
Absolutely. I don't know which. Commissioner Marsh.
Here.
Commissioner Quigg.
Here.
Commissioner Dantzler.
Here.
Commissioner Lowe.
Here.
Commissioner Vanetta.
I am here.
Vice Chair Kennard is excused. And Chair Getzik.
Present. Okay, so the open house rules in preparation. I forget now, who's leading that discussion?
Well, I'll kick it off since we're being recorded and on YouTube. At a prior Planning Commission meeting, in discussions about the upcoming open house and what the program would be, the commissioners requested a special meeting in advance so that we can talk about roles. The second item was also added. That's the second item on your agenda, which is discussion of the individual elements. For the first item, in preparation for the open house, we have a representative from SCJ, Bill Grimes, participating remotely, and he has a presentation and a series of exhibits to share screen, and I'll let him kick it off. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark, and planning commissioners. It's great to be here tonight. If you're looking for an extensive presentation and an extensive series of exhibits, you will probably go wanting tonight. What I was wanting to do is just quickly show a diagram on what I'm hoping we can do during our open house next week. We're hoping to be able to have dozens of people at RISD attending with us to learn a little bit about what's in the existing comprehensive plan and what lies before us as we go through this process. So this is the overall schematic layout where people will enter, shown here, entering from the right side of the room, coming in past a welcome table. And you'll see a diligent staff person standing at that table helping someone sign in, and a couple of folks who are in the process of signing in. This is in plan view. And then folks will come into this center area where they will be ringed with the various information boards representing each individual element. And I think you've had a chance to see those. I think we got those to you yesterday for a quick look. I'm hoping that each planning commissioner is able to staff the element that you have been researching here over the last several months. And then we will also have a table at each easel position for a comment board. And we've created a rather generic comment board. People can either write on them or put a sticky note on them to let us know if they have thoughts about the individual elements. We will also have a brief presentation, which I will present. And I'll do it twice during the course of the evening. Once soon after the session starts. It'll be about a 20-minute presentation, and we'll talk about what our task is in front of us, what types of targets we need to hit in terms of housing and employment in the next 20 years, and then I will also talk about some of the things that we know we must tackle because of compliance requirements. And we'll be reaching back into some of the city's recent work on housing and climate action too, to help inform that part of the presentation. Then I'll provide a brief summary of the interviews that we had a couple of months back, where we started to get familiar with the various topics and issues that this process is going to be addressing. I'll also report on the results of the penny poll. Tyler is compiling the results, and I'll get those from him and make those public. And then I will also introduce what we are all doing in this open house format, so that people have a chance to feel engaged and can go directly to the topics which interest them and talk to each of the commissioners at length. After I introduce the activity, I will also summarize what we believe our next steps are going to be. And some of those next steps, I think, are going to be the topic of our later conversation tonight. As we segue from this understanding of what the issues are, what the charge is, to actually start thinking about how we can begin to consider our direction in terms of which scenarios we'll be heading in. But I'm not going to be presenting scenarios at the workshop or the open house tomorrow night. I will just hint that that is something to come, because I think that is something that will get people interested about this process. And I think actually it's probably premature for us to bring that up right now. So anyway, that's what I'm proposing for the format and for the session. That presentation that I gave near the beginning of the session, I will also, or that I will have given near the beginning of the session, I will also repeat about 45 minutes before we close, so that people who may have arrived later have a chance to hear the same information. The presentation will also be available online afterwards, as will all of the boards. So people will have an opportunity to either refresh their memory of what they might have seen when they were there, or they can go ahead and alert their friends and family to tune in and see what else other folks might have to offer if they missed us at our open house session. So with that, Mark, I'll hand that back to you and Charlie to see if you'd like to have some conversation. I'd love to answer questions.
Commissioners, what questions do you have?
Hi, Bill. Good to see you. How long do you think your presentation will go, and how long will you have for question and answers afterwards?
That's a great question. I believe that my presentation will be about 20 minutes long, and I'm not sure that having general Q&A would be as effective as maybe having individual conversations after the presentation. That's my first thought. I mean, unless there's something that is of general interest that comes up, or that I may have missed during the presentation. But I'd like to be able to devolve the conversation to the individual stations as quickly as possible.
That could actually occur. People could migrate to the stations even while you're asking or answering questions after your presentation.
Okay.
Commissioner Amy.
Just a general question about the presentation. Do you anticipate going through each of the elements, or, the content that are on the boards that we see? Are you planning to go into those in any detail? No, you're just talking about the whole process, and we're really relying on people to read the boards while standing in front of them to get the information that we're seeing there?
Yes, I will do my best to tantalize and to help people understand why each topic represented in those boards is worth their attention.
Commissioner Van
Yeah, I don't really, where do you look? I guess my question is, like, after the end, will there be like a summary session where maybe each of us say like, hey, here's some common themes, and then that kind of thing, and then off to the next commissioner, or do we not even bother with that and just, what's your thoughts on that?
There's going to be time for that, actually the following night, but I don't know that we'll have written summaries of the comments for our meeting the following day. So we open house on Tuesday, regular meeting on Wednesday. One of the items for the regular meeting is we're going to debrief on all that we've heard over the past several weeks.
We are meeting on Wednesday, I forgot that.
Yeah. I think that would be a good time for those of us who are at the charts to include what we heard at the charts, but I don't think we will have the written comments. Part of this, what this format entails is people have the opportunity to either write directly a comment on a chart or write on a sticky and affix it to the chart. And all of those comments are going to be recorded. So we will have those at some point to look at, but it probably would be good for each of us to look at our board and kind of jot down some trends that we see just based on looking at those comments.
If I may offer, I'm not sure how much time commissioners will have after we close the event. But it might be nice to convene when we're done, just for maybe a recap of general impressions in the course of the evening. Thoughts about the threads of the conversations, the attitudes, what people seem to be most interested in. It would be helpful for me, actually, to hear some of that.
What do you think about that, commissioners? That's a good idea. We'll do that. Other thoughts, comments?
How have we been advertising this bill from your perspective?
I think that the staff has been working on advertising that, and so I imagine Mark and Aaron can probably give you some detail.
I know what their answer is going to be. But I'm asking you, since you've done this in many cities over many years with many different, groups and staffs and all that kind of stuff. What have you? I guess I'm wondering how many people we're going to have there and what kind of, invitations, advertisements you've seen with other cities. Obviously Facebook, obviously the website, obviously emailing people whose emails we have. I'm just wondering, what have you seen? Because when we walked in, my comment was, what does it cost to put a sign across Newcastle Way? Or Coal Creek, right? Coal Creek, because we put a big sign across Coal Creek Parkway, which is the main thoroughfare through our beautiful city. And that place is packed because, you can't go through Newcastle without seeing 50 times that we're going to have Newcastle days. You know when it is, you know where it is, and the kids will tell you from the back seat, hey, Mommy, I want to go there, next Saturday. I'm just wondering how many people of the 13,000 plus residents we have in Newcastle are aware that they should be at Risden for the open house. And I'm just wondering what you've seen in terms of advertising to people in all the different communities, different neighborhoods, apartment building residents, all that kind of stuff.
Right. I've seen jurisdictions do a full court press where they do that banner spanning the major arterial, where they post display ads in local newspapers, where they do a full-on social media blitz. And I've seen communities where they've really done very little. It seems like the big difference is the word of mouth and the buzz that's happening secondary to whatever kind of direct promotion the local agency is doing. So it's the staff people, it's the city council people, it's the folks who are interested in the process, it's the planning commissioners, it's all of the folks who have some insight into the process, talking to the people that they know to get them excited about participating. So, I think that there are things that local agencies can do to really promote it exhaustively. Now, what really seems to make a difference is that secondary communication among the people who care.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And I'm wondering, do we got to give out free pizza? What will it take to get people to this? Because I know if I had the choice between anything else and going to an open house on utilities ordinances, it would take free pizza or something, free daycare, something to get me to go that. So, I don't know. I've never done this before. I don't think not except for like Mark and Aaron, none of us, or Charlie, I guess you went through this before. I'm just curious what you've seen in other jurisdictions. And I'm hoping that my hunch is wrong and that Risden will be packed. But if it isn't, and are we going to do something like this again, Chair Gatzke? I don't know if we do, but I just suggest we offer free pizza, get a sign across Coal Creek Parkway, just put a little more effort into, advertising beyond the standard advertising, because this is a big BFD, as they say in the open house business. Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, no, great. great ideas. Thank you. And both daycare and pizza, or childcare and pizza, are good things to have at a meeting.
My personal opinion about whether we do it again, I'd say probably we won't, but it would depend on what happens in the next few months. And if some things emerge as hot button issues for people and things that would get people excited to come out, and then it might be worth scheduling another one to probe those hot button issues.
So I spent,
Wait, hold on a second.
Oh, sorry.
Commissioner Dantzler had a comment, and she was a little bit ahead of you.
Yeah, it was just one other question, maybe for you, Bill. Commissioner Quigg was asking your experience in other areas. As it started to get closer, it's now Tuesday, I've started to think a little less about like the residents, because we've done a lot of outreach and, those big events during the summer. I started to think about, probably because I'm reading through the elements more, like the key stakeholders of our city, not the people that you've already talked to, but people like our business owners, leaders of our faith communities, and more about the apartment buildings. And so I'm wondering, should we coordinate that over the next, few days? People talking to those individuals, is that already done? Is it important for them to come to a meeting like this, or is that like, no, bug them later, once we have a plan? Like, is this more for the residents or stakeholders is what I'm trying to get at?
While you're thinking about that, Bill, I do want to mention that we did send the flyer out to the business owners, and then we also, let's see, you mentioned business owners, and was there someone else you mentioned?
The two faith communities and
Yep.
then the apartment buildings?
Yes, to all the property management companies, along with the HOAs and whatnot, that we have information. Poor Jim probably got this flyer 3 times. Yeah, so, but we did send them out.
Is that in line with what you've seen at other events like this, a combination of stakeholders showing up and residents, or?
It is, yes. I'm sorry to interrupt, but yes, it is. The process is you generally build an email list, and you do everything you can to keep those people on the email list informed of every step in the process.
Commissioner Quigg?
I'm going to set the over-under at 100.5, I guess, because it's NFL season. To me, if it goes under, I think we should do it again. I mean, because I feel, like you said, the people in apartments, I don't know how much we reach them. I mean, they have new emails all the time. People move in and out. I mean, how many of those are really on our newsletter distribution list?
More like their, sign in their lobby.
Yes, exactly. Something, I mean, it's campaign season. I mean, people could put a shirt on all the candidates and open house this season. I want to make sure, because I do think we should do this again. I think this is a, I'm not saying we need to do 5 of them, but I'd like at least 2. And I think this is kind of a trial run in my mind to see what it's like to do one of these. I mean, Charlie, so let's see what happens and, kind of get a feel for, if there's any issues that arise. I've been reading up on this housing issue and beyond Aaron's fantastic presentation, learning what the heck middle housing is. And so I watched some YouTube videos. Holy shamoly. There are lots of videos on this topic, and a lot of them are people complaining, I didn't know. This is the first I've heard of it, I didn't know. And I just don't want that, right? Like at our HOA, we give people ample opportunity to comment on stuff as much as possible. And so they can't complain, right? People complain anyway, but say, look, we put something on your doorstep, we sent you an email list, and all your neighbors are there but you. I just want to make sure, I just don't want to see a repeat of what I watched on my YouTube videos today, where people keep claiming, I didn't know, I wasn't invited. Say, no, we had a banner across the street, we had 2 open houses, there were mailers on every apartment complex, the business community was notified via the Chamber of Commerce, we sent emails to, all the different HOA groups and activities groups. I just want to go overboard, because I just feel like we're going to do what we have to do, to comply with state law and just to provide equitable housing, provide ample utilities, and provide, all the stuff that's required of the comprehensive plan amendments. I'm anticipating pushback, And I just want to make sure that people can't say we didn't try to let them know, because that's half the battle, I think. It's just them saying, yeah, I know about it, I just was too busy that night. Well, that's on you. If you didn't vote, that's on you.
Commissioner Vanetta.
One thought, so we don't have time to put a sign over Coal Creek, but I like that idea. One of the things they did for Newcastle Days, I don't, Debbie might have been doing it, every day there was a Facebook post. It was like, we're having pony rides. We're having, an art fair, whatever. So how about between, tomorrow and the event? Because there was a post a couple days ago advertising it, but it was pretty generic, right? It's just like, come to the comp plan open house. It's too vague. You should make a post that says, we're talking about housing, higher densities, some of the buzzwords on here. That might get people's attention. And then the next day you talk about the downtown or parks or whatever. Something like that. I mean, it's short term, it's easy to do. People might see it and be like, oh, maybe I should go to this. I don't know. Just my 2 cents is.
That sounds like a great idea. I think it could be done very simply if there's somebody to do it. And the simple approach that I would recommend is just to have, the headline would be, what do you want to be the future of housing in Newcastle? Come to the comprehensive plan open house on blah, blah, blah. What do you want the future of the downtown to be? What do you want the future? Have a question that picks one of the elements, future of transportation, and see if that piques people's interest.
Yeah, it's worth a try.
Update on that, Kate got back from her travels Tuesday night, Wednesday-ish. Then the first blast went out. There's no time between now and next Wednesday for your social media policy reminder. So what I'll say is that she has been instructed to do blasts every day. All I've given her for material is the flyer. If you wish, write something down, hand it to me at the end of this meeting. I will email her tonight and say, do this instead. But she's already instructed to get that out every day. And the reason I don't want to wait for next Wednesday is that individual commissioners can take that material and broadcast it, expand on it. But if you go that next step of using it in a different capacity that creates public records, then Jane needs to know. And so that's set up now. So it's an easy matter of getting material to Kate. She'll broadcast it out. If you see it and want to move it forward, whatever that term is, you can do so. If you take it and create a different material, just let Jane, the city clerk, know, and then she'll work with you to capture any comments. And we can do that all the way up till Tuesday night.
Commissioner Dantzler.
Sorry, I'm sort of moving on, so maybe.
Well, I have a question about that. If we were to take this approach of, what do you think about the future of blah, blah in Newcastle, come to the comprehensive plan open house, what would we be displacing if we put that message in its place?
I don't think you'd be displacing anything. I think she adds to what she already has. And the arrangement we have through the city manager is we can create material and get it to her. So we have that flexibility. I'm not a social media person, but there's probably a length issue as to what she can post and where, maybe, maybe not. But she has the flyer and did this initial posting, and so I'm willing to forward it to her and say, do what you need to do on whatever platform to make this happen. And I think that would be helpful to her.
Commissioners, what do you think about that headline I proposed? Would that meet your needs? Because I can write something up and provide it to the city clerk.
Yeah, and I think that the key is picture. 90% of eyeballs is, you're going to catch them with a picture. So you have to have like a picture of a house or a picture of a park or a picture of, I don't know, but yeah, I was going to say that, but it didn't come out right. But just something,
land use
you got to put a picture, because if it just is a bunch of words, they're going to scroll past it so fast. They're just not going to look. But if you have a picture, it's going to grab their attention. They're going to look at it, The future of housing in Newcastle, live at Tuesday night, something like that to grab their attention. But I like your idea, Charlie.
The idea is doable. I think the only thing I want to be clear on is I don't have time to create that material and forward it. So all I'm asking is help me create the material so that I don't have to sit, ponder, and do it, because tomorrow's my catch-up day. So if we
I'll
can
create it.
achieve that, I'll get it broadcasted.
Okay, yeah, we can do that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, Commissioner
Just have
Danzler.
one more thing about the promotion of
Yeah.
the event is, I don't think we should underestimate, us 6 people, that we're probably the most invested in the Tuesday night event. So if we're around this weekend in Newcastle, handing out extra flyers, talking to our neighbors, online, of course, is great. You reach more people, but I think when I get invited to things with, a real human that I'm talking to, it goes an extra bit, so. Have extra flyers that we could take? Are they all gone? Oh, yeah.
And if I could add one note to a second opportunity, in my professional opinion, this first open house is awareness. It starts down the road of addressing, I didn't hear, I didn't know. You always hear that at the podium, and it's a start. The bigger impact is when you actually have a binder or draft strategies where you want eyes on that. And so if there's a second opportunity before you meet as a group and make a recommendation, that would be the time. Then there's something for them to actually digest and understand, and we can explore a banner. And all those measures, this open house was relatively cheap on the budget and the grant. And so I think we could have a second one, work together and achieve that, reach 13,000 plus idea.
That'd be great timing to do it at that point. Any other questions? I have a suggestion for the arrangement at Risden. Could we place some chairs, maybe 20 chairs in front of the presentation so that people have a place to sit for the 20 minutes that you're going to be presenting?
We have access to chairs. They said there's more than you probably need. We'll put a symbolic amount that in keeping with the stations, but that would kind of define that initial 20-minute period. There was a moment when Bill was introducing the format and so forth that lent itself to everyone standing up for that period in that circle. But if we filled it and then put some surrounding chairs behind and started the presentation from a more comfortable position, and then you kind of introduce, okay, now get up and go to, wander around with your passport. Thank you.
I have modified the floor plan.
Looks good. Okay, have we covered 5.1 adequately, Bill, do you think? Mark?
I assumed that the discussion of the individual boards was with this first item. It lends itself well to either item on the agenda, but please clarify when we have that discussion.
Let's have that now.
Okay.
So I guess I'll ask the commissioners, you've seen the boards. I've actually provided comments to Bill already on mine, some just wordsmithing and a couple of substantive additions on the downtown board. If you have thoughts, and if you could just submit them to Bill, or we could talk about them now.
Please, somebody go first. I have 5 things to say.
I guess I need to, I guess I could use a little bit of guidance, and I need to rethink how I was going to approach this, because with my board, the land use board, particularly after we talked about this the other day, I was really thinking of it holistically, and I wasn't expecting to see kind of a downtown component bifurcated out of that. I didn't realize that was going to be treated separately here. So I guess I need to be thinking about it more. Am I talking more about, open spaces, critical environments, critical habitats, things like that? There's some housing components to that here, but in terms of things like, where do we want to think about growth happening? commercial growth, how does that intersect with housing? I guess it feels, I'm trying to understand now with this new downtown kind of showing up in the poster boards. I guess I could use some direction how to think about this with there being a separate downtown conversation around that. So if somebody can help me think about that, that'd be great.
I'm happy to weigh in.
For anybody who can give me some insight on that. I was just surprised by it.
Well, I think you're bringing up something that is maybe important for all of us to keep in mind, is that these elements are all interrelated to some degree, and I do think that the land use plan board, one that does have a direct tie to land use, because a lot of what might be conceived in the land use world is going to take shape in downtown if it plays out the way I believe it might as the process continues. So, but really, the transportation board also has the same overlap consideration with land use, as does the economic development board, as does the housing board. So I think that what'll happen is that you'll be able to speak perhaps at a higher level about each of the topical elements, and then point to the land use board as an opportunity to see how some of these things may actually have an opportunity to play out. I don't know if that helps with as a response to your comment, but that is something that was occurring to me too as I was putting it through there. And the downtown plan is in many ways an implementation tool of the comprehensive plan. And so the comprehensive plan sets the philosophical and the values-based framework within which the downtown plan operates. So I think just by the nature of the subject, it's going to have a little bit of that overlap.
No, I acknowledge that there is overlap among all of these categories. Maybe the thing I need to do is just sit back and listen as you talk to everybody else about their elements, and then I can just distill from that. That might be a better way for me to think about going through how I'm going to approach this, because there is that overlap there. So
I will say that regarding the downtown plan, there's enough political interest in that, and there's also enough detail about it that if it were to be combined in the land use plan, it would get short shrift, and the other parts of land use would get short shrift. So I think, for me, I think it made sense to break it out, and so that the board could describe the issues more thoroughly for the downtown plan, and not take attention away from all of the other land use elements, land use considerations, I should say. Yeah. Commissioner Dantzler.
Just to clarify, is the downtown board just a board for Tuesday night, or is it actually being proposed as an element for an actual section of our next comp plan?
It's just a board.
It's just a board.
It's for the open house.
It's a board, yeah.
Yeah. It won't be an element. The actual downtown plan goals and policy. No, the downtown plan is based on the goals and policies in the comprehensive plan. And then if out of this comprehensive effort, the community decides we need to relook at the downtown plan, that's a separate activity. But the feedback and basis is part of this periodic update.
There are some indications that the downtown plan will be an issue in the upcoming election. There's one candidate who has expressed an opinion that there shouldn't be more density down there. And I think you might have heard opinions about during our various public events that favored, a downtown that was more developed. So I think that it might be something that we will end up focusing on more. We'll have to see how that goes.
While we're on that subject, we talked about this on Tuesday about who mans which board. For instance, Commissioner Kennard is coming back from a long trip that day, and so we have Davi arriving to cover in case he can't make it for Parks and Trails and Rec. And then Commissioner Marsh for land use. And what we talked about on Tuesday is that Tyler, Aaron, and I are available to fill in as may be needed. And so I know we have it covered, but I haven't specifically decided upon in any fashion, I don't think anyone has, who's going to stand at the downtown board.
I think that's our decision.
Yeah.
And I think it might be one of the most important boards because our penny pole, walkable downtown, I think that was top. So, it's
After public safety, yeah.
I think two options are a staff member can man it and capture the feedback, or combine it and have the downtown board with the land use board in the same station and staff assist with that.
And to be clear, I'm not asking that be the case. I'm just trying to rethink about how we're going to have these conversations. So
another thing that the boards show is a combination of the utilities and the capital. And I'm trying to remember who has capital, Amy. So that's, the utilities was an element assigned to me. Nobody was assigned a downtown plan. I was involved with the downtown plan because I was on the commission back then. I'm not sure, was anybody else on the commission at that point? Okay. But it probably would be good to have those three areas grouped together. So if there is overlapping conversation, we can point somebody to another table or share something easily to another.
Charlie, just to double check, that was the downtown, the CFP, and the land use boards?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the economic development can also linked with downtown, right? That's those retail.
So, they're all linked. They're all,
Yeah.
transportation is linked to downtown too. It's,
How about this? We need a circle and people need room to talk and hear. How about we take it upon that because they're all linked, each station remembers to remind people that they are linked and please visit all stations and carry the issue with them, no matter which station they're at. That way we're capturing, even if we capture the same comment 4 times, word for word even, at least we capture it.
It seems like a major benefit for this kind of an open house is the opportunity to.
you're fading out there, Bill.
What's that?
We couldn't hear you.
Oh, I was thinking that one of the major benefits here in this session is an opportunity to educate the community on how a comprehensive plan works. And so if someone is talking to you about your particular element, it's a great opportunity to point them to another element and explain the interrelationships between the two, so that they have a chance really to understand how this all knits together into a consistent policy package.
Commissioner Lowe?
Yes, I would like to get some clarification or guidance on the transportation board. Main kind of like the structure. The last section is what we now must do. Is that supposed to be the things we are not doing today we need to do? Or I guess I'm not sure how to think about that. And is that like the things not on today's plan? Or because I'm looking the 4 items under transportation, the funding, there is a specific section in the plan already talking about the funding, right? So I guess what is this, what we now must do?
Right, that reflects what are new changes to the Growth Management Act since the plan was last adopted. So that comment about funding is that, yes, there is a section on funding in your capital facilities element and in your transportation element, but there is not necessarily something in there that explores what happens if that funding doesn't occur. If you don't get that funding, then what do you do? And so I think that's one of the elements that we need to make sure we include when we talk about transportation this time, is the possibility that maybe the funding we're counting on will not arrive.
Okay, that makes sense. And then on the transportation, there are those 4 items. How should I think about the third one? Include policies on racial and social equity? Is that also, I don't think it is in the plan, but I mean, what is specific we are looking here?
Right. Environmental justice is something that figured large in this last legislative session, to make sure that our investments in the transportation system are made with a little bit more sensitivity to how they might impact the populations affected by those investments. And so we need to have some policy in our new transportation element that makes sure we pay attention to those considerations when we make our decisions.
One aspect of these boards that I think calls for us to do something extra as we listen to people, the boards, what they talk about, what do we need to do now, that's all driven by legislative mandates. It's not driven by what do we, the citizens of Newcastle, think we need to do now. And so I think we need to make that clear to people, that that section there is everything but what we need to hear from you. And it's important that we hear from you about what we need to do now, apart from what the legislature is requiring us to do.
Yeah, I think that's a very important clarification. And yeah, people will, that's not like those penny poll.
Bill, could we add to each of those sections a question about what we need to do, respond to whatever citizens say should be changed about our comprehensive plan? So it's there as a reminder for people that we're not forgetting that we're here to hear from them?
I was thinking it would be nice to add a few more words to the "what we now must do" line, so that it would say what we now must do to comply with the law. And then we have the box on every board that says any ideas about this topic, jot them down. Maybe I can rephrase that so that it is a little bit more of a prompt for people to offer their own ideas.
How's that
about
sound,
these
commissioners?
topics.
I think that's great. I think the line maybe I would be cautious of walking is encouraging people to give input and not create an expectation that everybody that gives an idea, that idea necessarily is going to ultimately be reflected here, because they're going to be contradicting ideas, and there's going to be a lot that will not integrate or that's not necessarily relevant to what we're doing here. So, I think how that gets phrased is important so that people don't walk away with an expectation that because they give us input, it's going to be, every single bit's going to be here.
I like the way you suggested, Bill.
Give us something else to consider.
I like your suggestion to say, what do we need to do to comply with the law? And then to add something on the idea board. Commissioner Quigg, I know that you had some reactions
Sure.
to the boards.
Big breath, here we go. I think there's a lot of interesting things to discuss, and based on those YouTube videos I mentioned earlier, I think there's going to be one issue that dominates this comprehensive plan conversation for, the foreseeable future, and that's this middle housing issue. I don't think it's even close. I read the law today, and here are some snippets that I read. The new rules will result in an overall increase in housing units allowed in single-family zones. We're allowing middle housing throughout the city. We're allowing additional density near major transit stops, which is, I think, well, we talked about that earlier. It says we're adopting comprehensive plan development regulations that have significantly reduced or eliminated residentially zoned areas that are predominantly single-family. And finally, we have greater increase in middle housing production within single-family zones. You take that, you compare it to what I read in our comprehensive plan, authored by Charlie Gatzik and his colleagues many, many years ago, and just the housing element summary, and it's reiterated over and over again in later on pages. The housing element promotes the need for diverse and affordable housing now and in the future. The element designates appropriate areas for location of multifamily housing and promotes accessory housing density averaging and other incentives to encourage infill. The housing element provides innovative policies for housing to meet the needs of residents over the next 20 years. All of the proposed multifamily housing will be located near the Community Business Center and on Coal Creek Parkway. Those are two very, very, very different things, right? When this comprehensive plan was authored, we're going to jam all the multifamily housing into the, business area off Coal Creek Parkway near bus stops, near stores. What this says is no. You got to change everything. So I'm just saying, I think all the other stuff is interesting, fascinating. The boards were fabulous. I think this board on housing is terrific. I anticipate this being a touchy topic, and I think that it's one we'd have to make sure on the same, not on the same page. That makes it sound like we're all going to speak with one voice. We have multiple voices here, and all sorts of people are going to chime in and comment on it. I just think I need to understand how to handle, the tidal wave of comments and consternation that are coming our way around this issue. And that goes back to my prior comment. I think we need to, when I watch 5 YouTube videos on this topic, and all of them are just ugly, where people are just picketing and fighting, and I didn't know, and all that kind of stuff. And I don't want it to be that way. We're obviously going to make some changes here. So I just feel like we have to do it in a transparent, open way, like this city always does everything. And I need help doing that and understanding what we're getting ourselves into, because I read it for the first time about an hour before I came here.
Commissioner Marsh?
I think layering on that, I mean, there are things that a community that is our size and that is kind of structured the way we are with transit as we have it, as I understand it, and I'm not a House Bill 1110 expert by any stretch of the imagination, but there are things that there are things that we need to do that we're required to do by law, right? And I think being really super clear and specific about that for Jim in particular, I think would be really helpful, because then there is a second discussion about, okay, then you have to do this. We have to do this. We don't have a choice, state mandated. What are we going to do outside of the areas where we have to implement this mandatory middle housing requirement, right? As a community, how do we want to do that, right? Do we want to do that with duplexes, fourplexes, and essentially extend what 1110 does and do that throughout the entirety of the city? Do we want to do it through, multifamily housing that is apartments that is consistent with what was envisioned a decade ago? Is there some hybrid? But I think that really important distinction is this is mandated, and we don't get to make decisions about this. We have to do it, but let's talk about everything else. And I think for you to get that guidance before this meeting would be super helpful.
I would add that we don't have to be defensive about this, because we didn't create this comprehensive plan. And we're here to listen to you, our citizens, to see what we need to change.
Echoing what Scott said, Bill, it'd be nice to understand the parameters. He pointed out, there's a new law, but there's some wiggle room within that law as to how it's implemented. I mean, it's complicated language, it's hard to understand and read, but yeah, it seems like there's different ways you can accommodate or comply with the law. Aaron?
Yes. And Mark, I just want to, except for in certain areas like critical areas and in HOAs where it's already been forbidden to have additional units, it's going to be at minimum 2 units per lot. So, yeah. So I just want to make that clear that, that's the minimum we're working with, and how that's accomplished is still being discussed through technical committees.
Just because I don't want to make it sound like I understood what you said, I heard what you said, it echoes what I read about. Can you kind of flesh that out a little bit for me? What does 2 units per lot look like? What would that, I mean, obviously you could put a tall building, an apartment building. What in between a single family, small family living in this big space, taking with a big backyard and all that kind of stuff, an apartment building, what is it, two units on one lot look like?
It could look like a duplex. It could look like a single-family home that is somehow split up into 2 units. If you remember way back to January, when we were talking about this, how we were looking at those units that were, they look like a single-family home, but then maybe you have an entrance on one side of the corner, an entrance on the other side of the corner. And to what extent this bill is going to be used, we don't know. How many people are going to put in multifamily versus single-family? Because people can still develop single-family. They don't have to be multi.
I thought those pictures were fantastic. I forgot about those pictures. Maybe having those in our back pocket would be helpful, so people aren't scared into thinking it's going to be bigger. We just went through the PSC pole installation, and our HOA blew up over that issue. But I don't know if I'm allowed to say it. It's not that bad. I mean, aesthetically, I didn't see a huge difference. I thought it was going to be these giant ugly towers that are going to ruin the neighborhood. That's what everybody was complaining about. And then at the end of the day, I was like, man, this is much ado about nothing. My personal opinion, not that of 90% of the people that talk to me about it. That's the hard thing. You get all the people that are excited about it, and that's where all the loud voices are. And the other people that, don't give a darn, don't get engaged. So I just want to make sure we're able to answer, maybe with those visuals you put together, what some possible unit parcels would look like.
Yeah, I can print some out and have them.
Commissioner Banana?
Maybe I'm misremembering, but wasn't there a map at one point with 2 circles drawn that we thought middle housing would be required in those circles, but outside the circles, not so much?
Yeah. That had to do with parking requirements and walkability and walk distances that they were stipulating under the proposed legislation at the time, and they kept changing it.
Oh, okay.
And at one point, we thought we might be required to allow additional units for affordable units, but Newcastle were too small to be required to do that. Larger cities are required to allow additional units if there are affordable units within the development.
One of the two units per lot is citywide.
Yes.
It's specifically in all zones predominantly single family. Every city's different. Some cities have traditional zoning. We have an R1 single family zone. Every city has a variation. The bill uses words like predominantly single family. Newcastle's code you can consider to be halfway there, where in the context of middle housing, ADUs and to some extent duplexes are allowed, and through a conditional use permit type thing. And the opportunity is to decide what is appropriate under the bill for Newcastle in this process. So for the open house, you don't need to be there on that issue. That's part of what we derive from the open house that goes into the problem statement or alternatives. or scenarios that I then use for environmental review, or the replacement to the penny pole. Yes, it's a hot button topic. It involves a lot of education on what middle housing is and isn't. It's not, forget definitions and terms, it's not multifamily. So it's a category. We can bring all that information to a work session. We already imagined that each individual element as needed will involve individual analysis and discussion and education for the community and the commission so that you can determine what that character is and determine how House Bill 1110 applies to Newcastle and to what extent. We can interpret the bill. Not everything in there is magically clear. There may be a legislative fix-it bill in this short session coming up. Maybe, maybe not. But what's clear that is in the bill is that it applies to us. And it's in all zones predominantly single family. We have to get to a point where we decide what's right for this local community within the mandate in the bill. So we have time for that. And I imagine that element is one of those that very early and extensively, we have those individualized workshops so that we can bring out all a year's worth of information.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but one thing that any duplex or triplex built in a single-family zone would have to comply with, it can't be any larger than the single-family home that you could build there. So you know that people can build huge homes on a lot. They don't necessarily build them, although some of the new homes that are being built are really big compared to the ones that their neighbors have. There are city ordinances that govern the size of the building that can be put on a lot in a single-family zone. You can make that a duplex, but it can't be any bigger than the single-family house that would have been permitted there. Am I correct?
That is correct. And so what I just asked Aaron, when the House bill and its various drafts came about, as we were tracking it, that disconnect about bulk, in my mind, it was, wow, how do we just double everything and still protect community character? But in general, at a high level, it's the bulk and mass of a single-family home. And the community decides whether that's a duplex, triplex, quadplex. But it's not 4 monster homes squeezed together. It more or less resembles the bulk and mass of a single-family home in a single-family neighborhood. And that's what those pictures show. What really brought it together so that I understood the purpose behind the bill, so I could begin analyzing how it affects the community. There's a middle housing book. I call it the Yellow Book. There's 2 chapters in there that really drive home that concept. And I think it's important to understand that if we're going to talk to the community about the definitions, the design guidelines, the setbacks, the driveway widths, heights. And I've been apprehensive to spend the money and just assumed people would be interested and go for it. But I think what we should do is buy 7 of those and get those to you and help you early in the process to get through that, because then you get at what's needed, which is how do you communicate and talk to the community about it. And more specifically, what it's not is more important.
Dantzler.
I'm noticing in the housing board, there's not a mention of 1110. Is that on purpose? Are we not planning to really go over some of the basics of 1110 and the 2 units per lot at this meeting?
Well, it's an introductory open house. So if it were on the board, it would be on the bottom category because we know we have to do it. But the purpose of this is just kind of, hey, we have a comp plan. There are things in there. Let's start absorbing it, and then we'll get to those specifics. We already know we're going to do House Bill 1110 oriented work, and not just at the policy level, but at the same time, we have to adopt an ordinance with development standards. So that's going to be a lengthy process that's not going to be done by next Tuesday. But if what you're saying is we know it and so it should be on the bottom category, we can add it.
I would add it. I feel like I'm going to mention it for the 3rd time tonight. I read the bill. and I watched 5 videos, and all 5 videos were people complaining they didn't know. I don't want them to say, you never mentioned it in your paperwork. Let's put it on there so we can at least make it clear that, we're available, we want to discuss this. It isn't, like Charlie said, this is not something that we did. This is something we're simply complying with. And so there's nothing to be scared of or ashamed of. We're simply trying to make sure that we take as much public input to the extent we're going to comply with it. Like, how do you want to make it look, you guys? Come on in and talk to us. So I don't think I agree with Amy. Let's put it on there so it's really clear we're welcoming people's comments on this soon-to-be touchy topic.
Commissioner Marsh?
Yeah, I am strongly in agreement as well. I think it provides an opportunity to really shape the discussion that I think is going to be inevitable around that for Jim to be able to say, look, we know we've got this requirement, but the things that we can talk about are things like, ADUs and mother-in-law apartments, relative to duplexes, relative to, whatever. And there's also a conversation to be had around, look, we know that this is a requirement that we've got to comply with. Are there areas that are transitional areas where it should be more than 2, right? I mean, that's something that, it may make sense in certain areas adjacent to Coal Creek and maybe some of these denser areas that were identified 10 years ago to say maybe these are transition zones. I mean, I'm not sure how that would be received. I'm just spitballing here, but it allows you an opportunity to leverage what we've got to deal with. And 1110 is something that just is what it is, and you don't have to defend it.
I just had an idea off of what Scott was saying. He gives me my best ideas. Here's what you do. Aaron. By we, I mean you, Aaron Fitzgibbons, senior planner Fitzgibbons. It comes with a promotion. You have 3 or 4 pictures. You say, which one of these is middle housing? And you have like an apartment building, 500 stories tall, the Trump Tower looking thing. You have something that's maybe like, 4 units. You have something next to that, maybe there's something that's 3 units. And something next to that that's 2 units. They're all middle housing, or they're all multi-housing, right? Just kind of an educational opportunity, right? Say, look, because people are going to see the apartment building, obviously that's check the one you think is multi-housing. Trick question, they're all multi-housing, just to show them, like, look, you guys, this isn't a big bad boogeyman. There's an opportunity to provide for affordable housing and multifamily housing in the city of Newcastle and still keep this character that you know and love. So, Aaron, could you get that done the next day or 2?
Comment. No, it's all relevant, but our goal is not to scare people or misinform. It's to start broad and ask the question. The House Bill 1110 is a minimum. It's a mandate, right? And so until you ask the question, you don't know whether the community, the council, the commission, or your neighbors want 6 or 8 or 9 or more. Or the message you're going to hear is do the mandate, right? And maintain community character. Then you have a mission. Then we can form the problem statement. And then we can go down that road knowing a more targeted objective of this process. And so what I would say between now and Tuesday is we're starting broad, right? And so if we add House Bill 1110 and start the awareness, we've achieved that. The specifics come later. My guess is the community is going to go for, what is the mandate? Do no more than that. Maintain community character. But is it fair to the process to start there, right? And so we're asking the broad question, get the feedback, and if that's where we're at, then you can trust that's the community's vision, and then we'll take it from there. Okay.
May I suggest for Tuesday that we give Jim, as the commissioner at the housing element, those pictures that, we've already looked at them, the diagrams that show what middle housing look like, so that when it comes up, he can show people what it looks like. And then on the housing, what we must do now, add a bullet, that's the first bullet that says comply with HB 1110, which requires duplexes and larger units to be, some language that doesn't say middle housing, because nobody knows what middle housing is, but does get across the idea that a state mandate to allow, yeah.
We could actually start transmitting that tonight. The weekend's coming, and it's busy times. We have the book, we have the pictures and so forth. We can achieve that as long as Commissioner Quick doesn't show picture of Tria and say that's middle housing. I'm fine with that.
It's not gonna be like Tria. Thank you, good idea, Charlie.
Commissioners? Who else? Who else? No. Yes, Commissioner Dantzler.
On the land use board, there's something on the third bullet down that talks about 4 homes per acre. Is that incorrect? Is that supposed to be speaking about what we just talked about, 2 units per lot? Or is that something different that
Yeah,
I'm
not
not
yet.
aware of?
So we have an existing comprehensive plan that's been put together since GMA was formed in 1990. That's the current understanding of the mandate. When GMA is formed, urban development goes into the urban growth area. Rural is preserved. And by rural, I mean the sticks. I don't mean small cities that don't have 5-story. We're in the urban growth area. So after Growth Management Act comes into being, everyone does a comprehensive plan because they have to. And then they start battling about local control and what's the obligation. And so when you start to define legally what urban development is, that's where the 4 comes into place. Well, it's current in the sense that we're going into the open house and we have a current comprehensive plan based on, 30 years worth of GMA. Now, what's missing is how we're going to take that and go forward with the mandates and the community's vision that may not even be mandated. So that's where we know that specific to House Bill 1110, it's 2 units per lot for a city the size of Newcastle. But it's not in the binder yet. So it's in the category of we're going to address it and wordsmith it and put it in the binder by the end of next year. And so having 4 units per acre represented on this board is consistent with current GMA.
It's what's on the books, I get it.
Exactly.
What's on the
And then
books.
this session happens, House Bill 1110 comes, and over the next year, that's one of the hot button topics that we need to address in this policy.
Does that need to be added to the what you have to do section? Or
Well,
no?
I mean, I guess I'd be curious to, are we at, as a community, I mean, within the boundaries of Newcastle, do we average at 4 homes per acre across, I mean, we must, from a density standpoint. Do we not really, Bill?
There's a lot of case law about whether you even have to do that in Supreme Court, and I'm not an attorney. I think the extreme is you can't be a city that says, okay, we'll comply with urban growth and we'll zone the minimum lot size 4 acres. There's your urban development. To heck with capacity. So the case law's clear, you can't do that. But you can have single-family zones, and so this just takes it to the next level. And I'd see you nodding your head, Bill, if you have something to add on to that.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say that if what you're after is a single-family residential pattern, and you want to hit 4 units per acre, you wind up having lots that are between 5,000 and 6,000 square feet each. So Newcastle has a mix of very large lot, single-family subdivisions, also has some apartments in there, but on balance, your land productivity now is less than 4 units per acre. I don't know to what degree, but I see that you are below 4 units per acre.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification. I now understand that's what that language is. We'll keep that in there because that's in the what's on the book section. Do you want to add anything to the what we now must do, comply to the new law, or no, that's not applicable to this board?
Well, I mean, I think it's an interesting question in terms of how that ties to target housing units too, right? I mean, if we're, and what we're gonna do in terms of mixed use and where the development goes, right? Because this is the average net zoning density across the entire city, correct? So, I mean, if we ended up doing, let's say we ended up doing, over the next 5 years, there was mixed-use development where the Safeway is, and we ended up getting, 500, 600 units there. Wouldn't that change the average net zoning density for the entire community? Or am I thinking about that term wrong?
No, it would raise it, absolutely. And so you have that in the structure of the comp plan right now. It's consistent with GMA 3 different times. And so now we have new mandates, and now we need to tweak it in such a way to keep that consistency. Another, and under the guise of hiding nothing and making sure that everyone's aware, those targets are also now mandated by an amendment to the Growth Management Act that you must plan for and accommodate affordable housing instead of just anticipate or whatever the other word was. So now with the King County planning policies, the deficiency in affordable housing needs to be addressed. So it's not just House Bill 1110 and market rate density. There's a variety of areas that we need to look at in housing and come up with the Newcastle way that keeps us in compliance with GMA, but maximizes local character and what the community desires.
Did you just say the Newcastle way? I like it.
I did.
I think Mark just coined a new slogan for the entire damn city, the Newcastle way. That's not the Newcastle way. Our way is beautiful, accommodating, friendly.
But by that, I mean local control.
I like the way you said it.
So I'm sorry, Charlie, but with regard to Commissioner Dantzler's question, I mean, I think there's the 4 homes per acre here, but I mean, we haven't talked yet about the targets for housing units, right? Housing growth here in the community. And I guess that is a great question. I mean, first of all, do those two align? And then does it make sense to put a bullet down here under what we now must do? And it's some way saying either, complying with the GMA, average net zoning density, or, planning growth to hit these targets, to facilitate these targets, to accommodate the targets. We could mimic the language. Is that an appropriate bullet point here? I mean, it probably is.
There's nothing wrong with it, yeah. But to play devil's advocate, how detailed are we going to go on this? Some people are going to walk in there, maybe an elected representative that'll tell you all about how House Bill 1110 came about and what it'll be 2 years from now. Some will be like, what's a comp plan? So to some extent, we could round these out. But if you start adding all the laundry list of everything we're facing, the intent of this is icebreaker-ish and some suggestions and guidance, right, to elicit feedback. So if you have a specific addition that kind of elicits that, that'd be very helpful. And I'm not saying what you just talked about extends into too confusing or too detailed, but
The suggestion that I made to Bill in the comments that I sent him earlier today was to reword this slightly so it says, work toward achieving a minimum average net zoning, blah, blah, blah. And then add there what our current net zoning is so people can see what the gap is between where we are and what the goal is, but making it clear that it's something that we're working toward over time. It's not necessarily something you got to do overnight. And I don't know what that number is, or if that number is, if the city even has an updated number of what our current density is. But that would be something, if Bill were to put this in the board, we'd need to provide him pretty quickly.
that leads to another very lengthy discussion that we can't have before Tuesday, and that's the urban growth capacity report. 600-something pages. Does it exist? Yeah. Is it performed before local cities do their long-term planning? Yes. But it sets those targets at the county level. And it's not easily explained. So it has that information. But it's not easily absorbed. And so I was just going to ask Aaron, separate from the open house, how can we start conveying the capacity report for Newcastle, the growth targets that are adopted into the King County countywide planning policies, how they pertain to the individual elements, affordable housing, growth, mandates, et cetera, and at this point in your update, how they pertain to the vision or community character. It's clearly not something that I could say, here, read these 3 pages, and there you are. It's that you have to really dive into that report, understand what's going on, and then see how it interplays with the region. So if we start that conversation, it's going to take some time. Definitely won't be before Tuesday.
What I think, and I think maybe this is part of your comment, Charlie, by having in here the average net zoning density of at least 4 homes per acre, we're inviting that conversation the way that it's here. And if we don't have something else in here that says this is what a new target is going to be, or this is where we are and this is what we need to do to close the gap, I think having that specific number in here without having any of that other data, it's going to be a stream of questions of, oh, well, what is our density? Aren't we there? I mean, I assumed we were there, maybe we're not, but that's going to be the conversation. And if I don't have that information, I don't think I want that line drafted that way in here, because I'm not going to be able to answer.
Now, if you absorb the capacity report, you'll see that the growth anticipated or assigned or targeted for the community, the capacity's there, and you'll know why. And so all the scenarios that'll be discussed and formed over the next year fit within that capacity report. I think that the first hurdle is understanding what that report is.
I don't think we need the capacity report, though, to put in what our current density is. I think that's all we're asking for at this point. Is that something that you have available that you could give to Bill?
In some of the appendices, we get at densities. We don't have I have not seen a magical number that says citywide, the residential density per acre is X. But what I know is that our existing comprehensive plan is certified by Commerce, and the policies and the planning for and accommodating achieve that. We don't build houses. If nobody builds a house tomorrow and we don't achieve that, we don't have that density. But for planning purposes, somewhere in the appendice or the capacity report, we'll get at a number. I just don't know where it's at.
I'm wondering if it's important to put that in there at all as a talking point, rather than something along the lines of, meet growth targets, as stipulated by the county or something along those lines. We have growth targets and we have to meet them, and that's what we have to do.
If we can't provide the current density, I would take out that 4 homes per acre and put in some vaguer language so that we don't have to be ready with that answer to that question.
And can I put a different twist on this a little?
Yes.
The 4 units per acre was adopted with the existing comprehensive plan, so it would be compatible with the way the Growth Management Act was before 2023. But now, since 2023 has happened, that is moot. As Aaron was talking about, we've got population targets that we need to hit. And now we have a mandate on how we can treat our single-family zones that presumes we're going to have densities at least twice as great as our policy previously had allowed. So it's an accurate statement of what's on the books today, but our challenge tomorrow really has nothing to do with that 4 units per acre threshold.
Then let's take out that bullet.
Agreed. I wouldn't include it at all. Honestly.
Do you have any objection, Mark? Taking out the bullet?
No, not at all. Not at
Okay,
all.
good.
Yeah.
We got a decision then. Are we at the end of this particular item discussion, commissioners? Anything else you'd like to add?
Do Paul or Maggie want to cover we talked housing into the ground, land use got its due. Did you guys want to cover your topics more?
Put on your speaker when you're speaking.
I was wondering if there's any target, like growth target, employment, or that since it will impact the transportation forecast. But I don't think that those numbers are there yet.
Could you repeat that question and let's direct it to Mark or Aaron?
Yeah, so I was, Mark, I was thinking like the growth target, employment, those data will also impact the transportation, how people travel, but are you seeing those
We actually have the number, the horse-traded share of Newcastle. We have the exact number, and it's adopted as part of the King County planning-wide policies. I wasn't here at that time, but what I see in that number is the traditional growth rate of infill. And the city has the identified capacity to achieve that through the current planning period, which is 2032. So this vision gets extended out to 2044, and we'd have to achieve the same level of concurrency in transportation based on that new number. But my earlier comment was that the jobs and the population target are baked into a very large document about capacity. So the number's easy and we have it. And as you read your element, you'll run into a paragraph that for the current planning period says that number. So the easy revision is to scratch that out, put the new number. The hard part is the related policies in land use, housing, and transportation.
Mark, they haven't changed that number since earlier this year, right? It's the same one?
Actually, I didn't review the countywide planning policy amendment that was just ratified,
Okay.
but the horse trading occurred before I got lost in COVID. So those numbers have been baked in for King County for 2-3 years.
Okay, so those are the numbers that I presented earlier this year. It's like 500 jobs and 3.4 million people or something. I'm being silly. I'm getting punchy.
I think it's the sheet that I gave you two, and we'll get that commission-wide, the summary.
But if you need that sheet again, we can send it around. Just let us know.
Okay, do you all feel prepared for your role on Tuesday night? Okay. Everybody knows what table they're going to be sitting at? Manning? I'll be at the downtown table. We could trade places if you guys want to circulate and hear what's going on. I mean, I don't mean just me and you, but you all should feel free to circulate if you mutually agree to that. I'm not sure if there's much to discuss on 5.2 beyond that, but I'm wondering if I'm missing something, Mark, about what we're going to cover in that element. It's general business 5.2 discussion, commissioner assigned comprehensive plan elements.
And that was more of we have an available opportunity, let's start discussing it. I know that I've met individually with several commissioners, and the offer extends it to everybody, especially as we go forward. This week, I talked to Jeff about public works-oriented elements, and that the open house is kind of an inflection point between general to more specific, and to expect people to call and say, I'd like to meet with you about the transportation plan, about the... Jeff won't be there? Yeah, he hasn't confirmed it with me, and I talked to him yesterday. So I portrayed it as it's not mandatory, and explained that Davi, who's his staff member, is going to be there to help Commissioner Kennard. But all staff are invited, Jane and everybody. I wouldn't be surprised if they all show up. Oh, and a side note, as far as attendance, we also offered it to City Council and the Community Activities Commission. They only needed to let the city clerk know so that the notice could include notice that a quorum may be present. I don't think a quorum of either is going to be present at this point. But if staff and those such people and commission show up, and let's say that's about 20 people, and we get 70, 80, or 100 identified count for residents, I think that'd be very important that the count is not staff and commissioners and consultants and so forth, but a unique look at how many from the community attended. And Chair, as far as the second item on the agenda, if there's no discussion tonight, I could just say that after next Wednesday's download as a group, that we can meet with individual commissioners. The primary task is that each one of these elements and appendices identify other documents. And so it expands. It's not simply understand the short element or the narrative and background and data in the appendice. Transportation plan is a prime example of that. There are a lot of materials adopted by reference that go into the review and understanding. And so these individual meetings, as they pertain to an individual element, are important so that we can get you the materials that you need.
The open house for the first presentation is at 5:30. People can arrive as early as 5 o'clock. I think that's what was publicized, that the doors open at 5 o'clock. Staff will be there by 4. I'd say you can get there anywhere between 4 and 5, but you might want to get there at 4:30 and just kind of get the lay of the land, and but that is the schedule.
The only real constraint, and Bill will be here at 4 and we'll do trial runs. The only real constraint is we can't be there before school gets out. That was made clear.
One other comment I might add here, it's just a general comment. Last night was a city council meeting, Tuesday night. Yeah, Tuesday night, I'm sorry, it was a city council meeting, and I gave my normal report to the city council. And I basically summed up what our activity has been working on the comprehensive plan. Talked a bit about the penny poll and what we have been hearing. I told them that we haven't had a chance to do a download between us, which we'll do at next Wednesday's meeting to share what we've all been hearing. But I told them that what I had been hearing, and I'm just one of the 7 commissioners, what I heard was basically an absence of any dominant message that there's something wrong with the comp plan. And that mostly what I heard was people talking about either things they liked about Newcastle or things they wanted the city to do in their neighborhood, build sidewalks or repave a street, or complained about how a street was repaved. So, and the council members did not ask me a lot of questions, so. All right. Well, that concludes our general business. Our planning calendar is next. Of course, you know, our open house is at September 26th. We talked about the time of that. The regular meeting is the following day. And I see here it says 6 p.m., but I believe that's a misprint. It's 6:30 is our, did we change the time? I'm looking at our agenda for today's meeting at the planning calendar, and it reports the start time of our December 27th meeting at 6 p.m., but it is actually 6:30.
No, it's 6 p.m. is our normal time.
6 p.m. is our normal time?
Yeah, no, I'm in a time warp.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
It's a regular meeting, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, sorry, my apologies. All right, that closes the regular business in the planning calendar. Time for additional public comment. There's nobody in the audience. We'll open the public comment period for anybody online. Nobody's online, so we'll close the public comment period, and we will adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Bill.
Bye, Bill. Bye, Bill.
See you next week.
All right.